All right. Okay. Looks like I'm online now. So, how is everybody? So, I sent an invite to Animist, and I sent an invite to Mary. So, hopefully, one of them can join me. Let me see. And okay, looks like Animist was in the chat earlier. Let me see. Move this down a little bit. Expand that. Okay, good. All right. So let's see. I sent invites out to them. I know that Animist often doesn't get my invites for, I don't know, whatever reason. Let's see. Okay, so let's see. And the topic for today, I think we had a open topic. So I will just wait for him to join me. In the meantime, let me see. Are we live? Looks like it. Yep. Okay, good. Yep, definitely live. Check my Twitter. Nope, no message there. All right, good. All right, so let me see. So hopefully everybody's doing all right. Hopefully everybody's day is going okay. We've been having a heat wave here in the Bay Area. It's been really, really hot for the past 4 days. Well, really hot is. It's been hotter than it usually is here. It's been like in the upper 80s. So not like it's incredibly hot. Not as hot as it gets down in like Southern California or parts of Northern California. Because, you know, we live right next to the ocean, so very cool. We just have between the mountains and the ocean, we have a really nice cooling area. Then when you get outside of the Bay Area, where we are in the Bay, and you start getting over those mountains, you go more east, northeastern, or southeast, it gets very, very warm. So places out in like Concord will be in the hundreds. So our weather, even when it gets hot, it's not that hot at all. And of course, we run around complaining about it. But yeah, it doesn't get that hot. Okay, let me see. So I'm probably going to trim these Hangouts down to maybe once a month. Because it's just getting to be too much. I lived in the Reading area for several years, 120 freaking degrees. Yeah, exactly. It's ridiculous. It gets really hot. So I sent you an invite, Animist, through my regular email account, and it says it's not a valid email. So let me post the email link in the chat so that you can. Whoops, that's not the one. So that you can join. Let me see here. Copy. Close. All right, there we go. There's the link, and then after you click it, I'll just remove that comment so that other people can't join in. So we don't have random people coming in here. Let me see. Because yeah, I sent an email to your email, and it said that it was not a valid email address. So I'm going to have to double check that with you when you get into the chat. Make sure that I have the right one. Hey, there he is. How's it going?
Okay. Am I coming through yet?
Yeah, you're in.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I have no idea where those invites are going. Just no idea at all because I can't find them.
That's all right. Let me just double check. Let me just make sure that I have. What I'm going to do is I'm going to post the email in here again so you can take a look at it.
You know, and my name's bad enough that almost I could misspell it, you know.
So, okay, so I'm putting it in the chat here, in the little window we have. Now, just carefully take a look at that and make sure I have everything correct.
Yeah, that looks like it.
And it's at Yahoo?
Yeah, at yahoo.com.
Huh, that is weird.
Yeah, it just refuses to send your messages to me.
That is bizarre.
Yeah. I mean, double check again.
Because I even sent it through my own server from my website. So I don't know. But it is correct, huh?
Yeah, that's the right thing. And believe me, plenty of people send me junk email there, you know, and you know, it's not fair that because you know we all believe in fair, right?
Right.
It's just weird that your specific emails don't get to me.
Yeah, because okay, so let me try it again so I can see the email message that pops up. Let me see here.
Of course, it is run by Google, so you know.
Yeah, but I mean, even so, there shouldn't be a problem with that.
Yeah, people have sent trillions of emails. Maybe it's that entity out there lurking in the artificial consciousness of the internet.
I don't know what it is.
Trying to make you work a little harder for your little hangout.
Right. Okay, so let me try this again. Okay, so when I try to send it, this is the message. Okay, so let's try to send it again. Okay, no matches found. Message could not be sent. One or more recipients do not have an email address. Please check your contacts and make sure all the recipients have a valid email address. So it's saying that your email is not a valid email address.
Hmm. Yeah, I wish the people who sold all those, you know, some prescriptions through the mail would get that message, but they all seem to have
really
no problem.
That would be nice.
Or the 5,000 Facebook updates I get every week.
Yep.
Every time somebody takes a picture in my family, I get, you know, I don't even care about pictures. Like, oh, somebody added another photo of their baby. Okay, great. I'm glad I got an email from the mail demon about that.
Huh. Well, maybe it is because maybe I'll have to add. Huh. I don't know. Whatever.
May just be stuck using the Twitter invite or something.
Yeah, I tried to do but you never check Twitter, right?
Well, I check it on the night when you send me a twit. When you
you do? Oh, okay.
Yeah, when you send me that, like right now, if you had sent that invite to Twitter, I figured out where those invites were going. I found the folder in the Twitter account where that invite goes, so it works that way.
Okay, good.
But
so let me do something, because what I did was the only people who I allow to receive emails from are people who are on my in my list. And the reason why I did that is because I was getting because I have a website, I was just getting all these ridiculous, just random emails. So let me.
That sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, it is.
I'll have to look for that control.
Yeah, I mean, it's really helpful to have that. Let me see. Okay, so oops, crack. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put your email in here, and let's see what happens after I do this.
Oh, I just found the group chat.
Oh, good. Okay, so now
in the Hangout.
Yes, we have one more person. We have the Red Devil. Hey, Red Devil, how's it going? Sorry about this. I just want to see if this will work. So how's the weather where you're at? Is it pretty calm or?
Oh, for me, it's beautiful right now. It's good. Like the 70s during the day and in the 40s at night.
Oh, nice.
And I'm cold weather boy anyway, so being mostly nocturnal, it's great for me.
But
if it gets down,
go ahead.
Oh, if it starts getting down in the 30s at night, I may actually have to put a little jacket on or something.
Might actually have to wear might have to actually have a blanket, huh?
Yeah, something like that. Oh, I irritate everybody in this area. You know, being from way up north and growing up with minus 30, minus 50, minus 70 something wind chills. You know, in the winter down here. Now the summers kill me, and thank God we're past that, because when it's 90 degrees with 95% humidity, I'm pretty much housebound during the day. I can't breathe that crap.
Yeah.
Because of the, you know, soggy. Like here in Frisco, it's soggy there all the time. It's just cool and soggy.
Bizarre. Oh crud. Yeah, well, here it's been very nice. Our weather has been really good.
Yeah, it was actually not too hot this summer. It was nice here.
Yeah.
We rarely got over 90.
All right. Well, I have no idea what's going on with this email thing.
Yeah, it's just not.
Yeah. Now I have like squirrel mail and some other thing. I could try sending it directly from my website. I don't know. We'll see. We'll try to get that worked out. Because one of the reasons why I wanted to send you an email is because I wanted to send you incense if you're, you know, as one of the perks for being the Patreon.
You know, I don't really use incense anymore.
Okay.
I really don't.
Okay.
I did when I was younger, used it some for some of the meditations and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And anymore, if I want to get into that kind of sensory thing, I tend to just go out and breathe the musty air.
Okay. Okay.
Go off in the woods where the leaves are rotting in the autumn or the spring or whatever, and just suck in the mold.
All right. Well, it's okay. Well, it's an option if you want, but it's also the kind you would have to have a charcoal for. It's not like a stick incense.
Yeah, I stopped using it some years ago.
All right, gotcha.
It could be that, you know, the forest mind and the mushroom mind has just soaked all the way through. So I'll have to go out in the moldy woods and just let it. But then I do a lot of my work outside anyway.
Okay. All right. Okay.
But I appreciate that. I appreciate the offer, but I don't think I would use it.
Okay. All right. And then I was hoping that Mary would join me, because I was thinking of having this hangout just once a month instead of every week. How's that sound?
That's up to you with your schedule. You know, I know you got a lot of projects and you got your own work to do. So
yeah, just because I think every week is a little too much, you know. But I wanted to check with you and definitely Mary and see what get your thoughts on that, you know.
But I totally appreciate how much time you spend on. What's it bitching about? Says my network connection is experiencing difficulties.
Yeah, you're kind of roboting out a little bit, but it's kind of in and out. If it gets too bad, try reconnecting and see if that helps.
I do that because I'm on mega broadband 20 mega speed here, so it shouldn't be doing that unless my local people are screwing up.
Well, all right. Well, hit refresh or try reconnecting and see what happens. So he's going to reconnect. Let me see. The obvious internet trolls obviously shitposting. Hey, how's it going, Obvious? With a name like that, I mean, people are going to be like, "Oh, this guy's obviously trolling us." Which forever? Hey, what's up? Which forever? Matthew Romanengi. I like that name. Romanengi. Sounds like a car starting up. Romanengi. And the Red Devil, of course. Hey, Red Devil, how's it going? So let's see. Is that better?
okay? Am I coming through any clearer now?
Yeah, pretty much. Okay. So I know that last week we had thought about a topic for today. I can't remember what it was, though.
Yeah, me neither.
Okay. All right.
I've spent the whole week since then while we did the Saturday thing, and I've been listening to some of the interviews on Cricket's channel, that Sacred Circle channel. So I got to hear a couple of your interviews there. That was interesting.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I have. I think she interviewed me twice.
Yeah, you did the history of Wicca and the Reed, and you discussed the various aspects of the ethics of witchcraft, and that was pretty cool. And then, like, just before this, I was listening to her. I don't know if you hear all her cast, but she was interviewing the deviant witches about god forms and possession, and that kind of personal communion. That is really interesting.
Yeah.
Made me feel, because practitioners who seem, when I first go in as the old guy, go, oh God, what are the young people up to now? And I'm listening to them, and they're not saying everything wrong. They're actually saying pretty on-spot stuff, and they're like catching, oh, if you do this, be careful about that, and don't do this unless you've already done this preparation. And they were like going between witchcraft and shamanic ideas and mystical ideas. And so that was just an inspiration I had tonight, that you don't have to do this shit for 5 decades in order to do this shit. Hopefully you get better, for yourself over time. But people that seem so young to me now are actually fully developed practitioners in a lot of ways. They've been doing it for a decade. And I think back to what I was doing, when I was younger than them. And it's like, yeah, they're actually being really careful and sensible about their practices. We used to do much crazier shit than that.
Yeah, well, that brings up a good topic. So what dangers are there? What awful, horrible things are going to happen to somebody if they're a practitioner?
Well, there's death, insanity. there's always the possibility of death, because this informs your life decisions, both in the moment and in the long term.
Okay, but we're gonna. Okay, sure. I'll accept that, but based upon what?
Well, you can get yourself into a downward spiral. Necromancers are for this, a really psychotic state of mind from doing it badly, and some channelers, and then they find themselves, sort of schizophrenic, incoherent on the street, ridden by half a dozen.
You're sure animist, but you're saying the same thing. I'm asking you how this is happening. You're saying that it happens to necromancers and all these other things, but you're not saying how it's happening.
Oh, people getting involved with stuff they're not ready to do, that they're not mature enough to understand well enough.
Okay. And what exactly is that?
Phenomenon.
And what exactly is that?
Okay, so a guy I knew a few years. We'll just go to one example.
Okay.
A guy I knew a few years ago. Eventually ended up being able to help someone, but he was a Romani, but he didn't have good family connections. He was basically more or less on his own, but he was obsessed with necromancy, or he was practicing it, and he found
and I'm sorry, Animus, just because a lot of people probably are not going to understand what that is. What exactly is necromancy? Because when I think of it, I'm thinking like a video game. Somebody calls up a dead person, and the dead person actually physically manifests or comes to life as a zombie. Is that what you mean? And you probably mean it what is your definition of that?
Communing with, or invoking, if we're using the putting into yourself version of invoking, because the chaos magicians switch the terms and everybody's all confused now. But bringing the dead, consciousness of the dead, or information of the dead, their personality, into yourself, or into magical objects, charged crystals.
So
balls,
invoking a spirit, Okay, so invoking a spirit into them.
basically,
Okay.
or yeah,
Okay.
and some of them find, and this guy certainly had found that they could contact more than they could cope with, and as a result of what amounts to erosive possession or the inability to get rid of something that they had summoned, that they become dysfunctional in their life, functionally insane, self-destructive, suicidal, uh, aggressive towards other people, unable to control their actions. And then there's always the question of how much of that overlaps with, with other medical conditions that they may have had anyway. But and at some point, they find themselves homeless on the street, babbling, or begging for dimes, or deliberately getting arrested so they can get a meal because they can no longer hold a job and function, or they become so destructive to other people that someone ends up doing them harm in self-defense.
Right. Okay. So, all right. Now, you know me, I'm skeptical, and I'm not new to this. I've been doing this for a while now. Now, how would somebody know that they have invoked some kind of spirit into them that is causing all of this? How would they know what? How would they know that?
They self-report.
They what?
They complain. They complain that they have this problem. In the same way that any of your spells work. It's somewhat an internal process. And as a way of double checking that, you find out whether even you find out whether you can use magical arts to resolve the problem. If someone just has a neurological imbalance, then something you do with magic is going to have a very hard time fixing the fact that their body doesn't make enough dopamine or whatever.
Okay. So, all right. So, watching these people, the Deviant Witches, and I like the Deviant Witches. I think they have a good show. And I enjoy listening to them on Cricket's channel. Okay. So, these people can somehow invoke a spirit into themselves. And by taking the spirit into themselves, it can somehow cause some sort of bad things to happen to them. Like they become suicidal or depressed or other things like this. Am I encapsulating your thoughts correctly?
That's what they complain about.
Okay.
And they tend to drive away other relationships when they get spiraled out of control.
Okay.
I thought this was a fairly well-known risk of certain kinds of magics, that it could affect the balance of your mind. I didn't realize this was something that was incredibly esoteric or unknown to the community.
Well, you know me. I don't believe in that.
Oh, I didn't realize you didn't believe in that.
Animist, you know I don't believe in spirits. We've had this discussion before. Well, anyhow, if you didn't know that, yes, that's my position. I don't believe in spirits. I believe that people reincarnate, but I don't think that the spirit remains on this plane. And I do not believe that people are capable of invoking a spirit into them. I think that they can create a thought form. That I agree, like a fetch or whatever you want to call it. I believe people can do that, but of course it only lives for an X amount of time. But as for invoking a spirit into someone, no, I don't believe that that's possible.
So, okay, I think I see where you're coming from. You don't see the spirits as having an independent existence outside of the mind.
I do not believe that. I believe that when you die, your spirit goes somewhere else. I don't believe it hangs around here. So that's for everybody.
Okay, how about entities of other dimensions or planes?
Okay, it kind of broke up a little bit there, but I thought you said entities or spirits of other dimensions or other planes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Astral plane.
Sure. No, I don't believe that. I don't believe that spirits are in an astral plane, and I don't believe that interdimensional beings can access this dimension. If they did, they would be happening all the time. So I don't believe there's any kind of now I kind of believe in a multi-dimensional theory. I believe there's multiple dimensions, but I don't believe that they are able to cross over from one to the other.
Physically or mentally?
Physically or mentally, yes.
Okay, so then you see because you've talked, you say you believe in magic, so that's a huge pot of stuff. So we have to figure out which bits of magic make sense to you. So okay, I'm just trying to refine.
Whatever, that's easy. It's Aleister Crowley's definition of it.
Okay.
You will it, and you will it. You can will anything in the future to come into existence. But again, that's my opinion and that's my theory of it. I can't put it on the microscope or weigh it or whatever.
Right. Now, I've heard you have that conversation with some of your skeptic friends where they were doing that same thing with you. Like, we don't have a machine to measure everything yet.
Right.
Some of these future technology, 100 years from now, we may go, oh, look, that thing's going on, and there's that swirl in the ether, and that means these dice are going to change or something. So
right.
they'll have to have whole new levels of security at a casino to keep the practitioners from screwing up all the games.
Right.
So okay, but then you're down, but you're good with the Fae, and that's a separate thing to you then.
Yeah, I don't believe. Yeah, I don't believe in the Fae.
Or the she.
Right. Yeah, but I actually mispronounced. I probably should call it the Denashi or the Ayashi, because that means the people of the mountains. So I mean, yes, but those are ancestors. Those were considered to be the ancient gods, the Tuatha De Danann. So yeah, it's kind of tongue in cheek with that. Yes, I believe in them. But that's the way that I view them.
Yeah, as a sort of ancestral spirits.
Yeah, but they're considered to be the ancient gods.
Okay.
So yes, in that sense, I don't believe that they're actually like beings that exist in a plane or in our plane.
So they're dwelt in the land? They're part of the landscape now?
They're a part of the mythology. They're the Tuatha De Danann, which were the ancient Gaelic or ancient Irish gods.
So you wouldn't try to talk to them or interact with them? You don't think they're interactable?
Not really.
Okay. All right. That's fair. I was kind of misunderstood where you were coming from on certain issues.
That's okay.
So I'm trying to talk about things that capture as an experience that changes our perception, because we're just seeing the world through. So we might as well not try to have the conversation about necromancers being possessed by demons, because
so let me
let's try something else.
Yeah, so let me just kind of approach it from my point of view, my perspective. I look at magic as something that is a fact, and it is something that can work. And I know that there's a lot of other trappings around magic, a lot of extra superstitious nonsense, which has unfortunately collected onto the practice ritual magic over, probably not that long, but it's been collecting over time. And it seems like we keep collecting a lot of unnecessary superstitious nonsense into magic. Now, that's obviously my opinion, because other people are going to think that all of those superstitious nonsense is very, very important stuff that you absolutely have to do. So I respect their viewpoint, and that's how I view it. So no, I don't. I think that when you die, your spirit definitely does not stay here. If it did stay here, we would be inundated with spirits. It would be literally impossible to invoke anything without suddenly invoking about 20 spirits, if this was the truth. Because if you look at the amount of time that human beings have been on this planet, we would be standing knee deep in spirits. I mean, it would be ridiculous how many spirits there would be all around us. So that's one of the reasons why I don't believe in that. And I don't believe in evil spirits, and I don't believe in good spirits, and I don't believe in demons, and I don't believe in angels. So if you believe that you are capable of invoking something into you, I believe that what you have done is you have changed your consciousness. You have now tricked yourself into believing this, and then you open yourself up to your own suggestions so that you can believe that you are under some kind of possession or something like that. And then you can sort of self-sabotage yourself. It's almost like manifest destiny, where you kind of start to sort of build and create your own reality around you. So in that respect, I could understand that that would be a little dangerous because you're not approaching it from the right mindset. Does that make what do you think about that? Or does that make sense?
That makes sense. And sometimes that's the way I work with it, and sometimes it's not. Hang on just a second, my throat's going.
Sure.
Okay. No, that makes sense to me as a point of view. And unless you had in-world real experiences that worked outside of that, there's no reason for that. I think your point of view is a legitimate one, as long as the experiences that you have continue to fit with that. I often deal with things in a different way, but I've known practitioners who did just fine with the model you're working on. And if the kind of magic you're doing and the settings you're doing it in.
Yep, you're roboting out a little bit. How's your connection? Oh, shoot.
And I've dealt with things in my history on I think I'm going robot again.
Yeah, you are, Anna. I'm sorry. I don't know. Is it your connection, or is it? I wonder if it's my connection.
I think it's Google, because yours was doing it a couple of minutes ago, and I just kind of wrote it out. Let me reload. Wait, no. Am I clear again?
Yeah, you're clear again. Maybe it's just going in and out.
Yeah, I think the connection itself. There's probably 5,000 Google going on right now. Their servers may be doing a little.
Yeah.
A little truncating of the bandwidth. But anyway, but in actually helping people here and there, dealing with a problem as if it were an entity worked, and using information energy theory, however you want with that, but the approach works is, in some cases, you just got to tell them to go back to their counselor and get a refill of their prescription because they're off their meds. And once they go take their pills again and their neurochemistry rebalances, they're okay. At other times, that's not the answer. The answer is something magical needs to deal with the magic, or at least in my experience, that has been effective in certain cases. Sometimes, someone comes back to me later and goes, "Oh my God, I'm so much better now. I'm out of that cycle of destruction. I'm working again." They're happy, they're creative. And, what I did from my point of view was I sent warrior spirits to slay their demon. And then did some follow up to see how they were progressing. But the effective agency that I employed was what you would consider a mental metaphor. And it could be that, the tradition that we're trained in is the way we approach it, and it's the way we're most effective. And it wouldn't necessarily be effective for someone else.
Right. Okay. So hold on one second before we get too far into this, because there's oftentimes you talk about stuff, and then there's points that I kind of try to remember that I want to come back to, and then you're talking about something else, and I kind of lose it. Like, oh no, wait a second, what did I want to respond to? So okay. I forgot completely what I wanted to respond to earlier about what you had mentioned. But one of the things I wanted to say was, I think that, and I think you sort of said that yourself, where we base our beliefs, we kind of base our worldview, and I'm using world in a very, limited state. I mean, kind of our perception of everything. It's based upon our experience. And so, I mean, obviously I've talked to many people who I tell them kind of how I view things, and they sort of like, look at me like a dog that just heard a whistle. They kind of tilt their head and just their eyes sort of become wide. They're like, how, and they don't exactly understand my point of view. And I understand that. But this is, my experience has been this way, and other people's experience have been one way, because I know people who work with like Ouija boards, and they believe that they've talked to spirits. That's just never been my experience. And when I've gone through an entire ritual based in the Key of Solomon, where I'm actually trying to communicate with a certain spirit, there's nothing coming through for me. So maybe I lack some sort of perception that other people have. That's a possibility, But it's never, and I'm very realistic about things, and I'm honest about things, and those things have never worked out for me.
Well,
And I've also and
not
hold on one second, please. Hold on one second, please. So one of the things that I've done is definitely tried to look at, I completely lost my train of thought. Never mind. Go ahead.
No, I get what you're saying. And I'm just saying, you work your practice from a particular angle.
Right.
And it's a little bit of a feedback loop, because if the angle you're working is working for you, mm-hmm. there's no reason for some other angle to impose itself on you. You're still doing good work.
Right.
And there would be, if you're able to do your practice sort of mentalistically, with the amount of mysticism that's working for you, then why would there wouldn't necessarily be any benefit in some other aspect of magic to try to impose it on you, because you're already in tune with the way you do things. Mm-hmm. And you're
kind of breaking in
across the outback of Australia or the woods of Canada. You're in a city full of people where people's minds and their social relationships and their political relationships are really important, and probably the most important things to work with or pay attention to. Mm-hmm. So your practice makes a lot of sense. A lot of times you kind of remind me of Penn Jillette, who mm-hmm. I love and has a very similar point of view about a lot of social issues and ethical issues. And he's also a guy who does his operation. He's literally a stage magician, mm-hmm. but he does his magic and his work in cities and seminars on in media, and in that, I think in those settings, the kind of approach that both of you take is probably the best use of time. If you had a bunch of free time to go explore some of the wild, weird nature shit that I do, then you might find there was an experience to have there, but it wouldn't necessarily be the best use of time in your practice. And likewise, for me, to get all involved in city politics would be really probably inefficient, because what I do is
I'm sorry. I'm not going to accept that. I don't accept that. I've spent time in Yosemite. I very much enjoy going into nature. This is an evolved type of approach that I have. I haven't started practicing yesterday. I haven't started practicing 10 years ago. I've been studying and practicing since I was 13 years old. So it's not that I have come to some kind of a conclusion based upon living in the city as opposed to living in nature. This has been my reality. This has been how I've approached things. I have tried to contact spirits to no avail. So I don't believe that they exist. I've tried to, contact pagan gods, and there was a time where I thought I was contacting pagan gods, but I think now I was essentially fooling myself. And so that's how I perceive it today. Now, magic in of itself, yes, I have seen the effects of it. I have seen myself actually do something to manipulate something that would happen in the future to my benefit. Now, I could analyze all of these events that I've recorded, and I can see the chain of events, and the chain of event goes to a certain point, and then after that, I can't explore it anymore because it just goes outside of my realm of, uh, you know, there's just a certain point where you just can't explore it anymore. So I understand through experience that somehow this works. I don't exactly understand how it works, like the very mechanics of it. I don't understand that completely. I'm still open to that. But as for contacting spirits and angels and demons, no, none of this has ever worked for me. And it's not like I have not tried. I have actually tried. I've done many things to try and experience these things, and they've never worked for me. So there are two conclusions. One, I lack that ability, or the other, they simply do not have the ability to contact me, or they don't exist. So I don't believe that they exist. I think that this is superstition that we still cling to. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, we still cling to it. And we believe that if we somehow let go of that, that is gonna it's gonna be like a thing of yarn where everything else is going to unravel, and we're gonna be left with nothing. That hasn't been my experience. Like if you read ceremonial magic, like definitely if you read the Key of Solomon and all this other stuff, you see Christian superstition in there. You see it in there. You see Bible passages. It's all in there. And we still do it today. And every time I hear people talking about evil spirits and good spirits, the first thing that comes to my mind is that's superstitious nonsense that they're still clinging to, you know?
Yeah, I know. I understand where you're coming from. And I wasn't disparaging your wisdom or your experience in total. I was just talking about what kind of unusual or extreme experiences someone might have that somehow brought something to their attention that had never mattered before. Okay. I know you're an experienced practitioner. You've been at this almost as long as I have. So, but we've just are, what was his name? I can't remember. He talked about reality filters and how you can build a perfectly legitimate view, functioning, working view of reality with, certain parameters, a certain kind of screen door, and different people may have different ones, and they can both work, and they can both look really different, and they can both be perfectly suited to the purpose of the person who's using that. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't, and so it's a little bit like, how do you then know what the ultimate reality is? And, it's kind of like Einstein said about time and space. Well, it is relative. And short of having a duel or, something like that, you just have to deal with the fact that some of the world is coming at us in relatively different ways, and we're dealing with it in those relatively different ways. Yeah. To me, it's really fun to know people who have used a completely different, sort of reality grid and make it work, and still have these esoteric understandings of how things are connected, magic. And there's things that I deal with all the time that just aren't part of their world. And there's things they do all the time that just aren't part of my world, because that's just not my work. And so to me, it's fun to find the edges of that. But it takes a while to sort out the labels, because if you look up the word run I did this once. I looked up the word run in the Oxford English Dictionary back when it was all still in print. 138 different definitions for the word run in the English language. You could have a run in your stockings. You could have a run of print on a newspaper. You could run to the store. You could run errands. You know what I mean? And everybody who uses that word in their world every day thinks they know what it means. Why are you talking about your stockings? I'm talking about newspapers, I'm talking about printing. And it takes a while to realize that the terminology itself has been adapted to those filters.
Mm-hmm.
So, and so that's part of why you and I have had such a good time trying to explore terminology to some extent, because our very notion of what those words mean has been tailored over the course of our long practices to our way of dealing with world and magic.
Mm-hmm.
There are certain things that you pursue very diligently and do a lot of work on, like, your videos and all the subject matter of that I would never do, which is why I enjoy, that's why I say I've always said I recognize that your work is important, and I'm glad you're doing it. And I think it's a function of your kind of magic that you do it. Whereas my work is something completely different. My actual practice is something completely different, and I'm happy to do it. But it's also clearly something that you wouldn't be doing, because that's not your sort of commission to work with.
Right. And I mean, I think that, like I said, everybody, they have their practice based upon their experience and how they perceive the world, and that's that's fine. I mean, I try to, whenever I'm talking with, because it's not the first time I've ever had this conversation with people about this. I don't try to claim that maybe I know the truth, quote unquote the truth, but those in quotes, because I also have to look at it from the perspective of, well, that hasn't been my experience, or that's not what happened for me. Now, for other people, they've described it to me. They've tried to describe it for me. They've tried to explain it to me. And it's something that it's foreign to me because I've never experienced it. And I mean, I've talked to some people who are, my judgment, but they're way out there. I mean, they're really way out there. They're into all sorts of different things, and that's what they do. That's okay. That's what they're into. And I'm just at that very farther extreme end of that. Whereas I'm very cautious. I'm very skeptical. I try to approach magic from a very, quote unquote scientific manner. And I just try to get rid of all these superfluous, unnecessary things that have been thrown on top of what magic really is over the years. So I kind of see it like these two extremes, and I'm just at one extreme of the other. And most people kind of like, maybe they fall in the middle of that, the far extreme of one, of being completely airy fairy, and being rather grounded and down to earth. And
I totally get that. And I think it's important for each of those kinds of practitioners to exist, because the people who are wild out on the edge, or wild way past the edge, they're like doing raw exploring of what could have been, or the possibilities. Someone who's holding the fort and it's saying, wait a minute, you guys brought back this whole load of stuff, and 90% of this isn't edible. You didn't bring that much actual food back while you were out there in the, wandering around the fringes. Try to be a little more methodical about the way you gather your supplies. Otherwise, we're all going to starve. So you may be a holding the fort guy, because you're right. A lot of superstitious or campfire stories collect around spirituality or communion or magic, and at some point you have to look and go, oh, wait a minute, that's all that bit campfire stories. But this other bit seems to actually do something useful. And so I think it's important for and I think from what I'm getting, a practitioner like you is, okay guys, what did you bring back that's actually useful? What's actually going to work, and can it work without that? Do we have to really does the candle have to be black, or do we just need enough light to see what we're doing? Does that I like that metaphor because
Yeah,
people get into
the
people see these videos, you know, and I'm kind of with you on a lot of this. People with the whole correspondences thing, because I don't do a lot of that kind of item correspondence, because you know the certain candle has to be red for this holiday and blue for this holiday, black for this holiday, and it really matters to them. When in fact their ancestors had freaking beeswax and bayberry wax, and it was whatever color it was. And the reason they lit a candle was because so they could see what the hell they were doing while they were making the holiday meal. So I do think it's important for someone to go, we've gone a little too far into our own belly buttons, guys.
Yeah. Well, I mean, okay. So as far as correspondence go, I think there's a practical nature to it, but I agree with you. I think that if practicality kind of there's symbolism and there's practicality. You know, I think that especially when you're doing certain types of rituals, like let's say celebrating a certain Sabbath, then yeah, there's a lot of it that is just symbolic. It's understanding why you're doing certain things, why you're eating certain foods, why, you know, what you're doing. And that is, you know, it's a ritual. It's a way of kind of connecting with the past. It's a way of kind of connecting to yourself. It's a way of connecting to your family. It's a way of connecting to your group, your community that you're in. And so in that sense, maybe it is important to have, you know, an orange candle or blue candle or red candle or green candle or whatever, because it fits into that symbolism. It fits into what you're doing. Now, if you're, let's say you're doing actually like you're doing magic for a certain thing, and you understand that there's certain things that you need for this to have the spell work, then it's important to make sure that you try to follow those ingredients. Because if you have that little bit of hesitation in the back of your mind, or that thing that's kind of going to be nagging at you during the ritual, then it's going to interfere with your ability to actually have what you want manifest in your life. So that's one of the reasons why it's good to have correspondence, in my opinion, at least. Now, the other thing is I often hear people talk about, like, you know, you can kind of use anything for anything. And that, again, I kind of disagree with, because there has to be a reason for everything. And if you're going to throw certain things into the mix, there should be a reason why you're doing it. You know, you're not just throwing in random things just because. You know, it has to make sense. I don't know. It's a really subjective thing that's kind of hard to explain to people, but you have to have a reason for doing it. You just can't be doing random stuff. You know, I don't know if you
Yeah,
understand that.
no, I completely understand what you're saying, and I'm glad that came up, because in a way, because of the difference in our traditions or our commissions, purposes, our ways of dealing with reality, we are basically agnostic to certain of each other's mechanics. For you, these correspondences with the physical items and the particular process and the particular way of charging your own personal energy for the spell, that's significant. It does something for you. It has an effect on your magic. To me, I couldn't give a shit. On the other, you know, and on the other hand, I'm out doing what I'm doing, and I'm dealing with, you know, bear spirit, or, you know, the girl talking to me in the morning, or whatever I'm doing. Those are kind of, I'm using hyperbolic examples just for the sake of the comparison. I'm doing what I'm doing, and that process works for me, but it's a process that doesn't even seem to appear in your world in any, you know. And so I think what we've got, and I'm going to go back to my 4-circle diagram, but what we've got is, in the magical world, you know, just like we have in my little 4-circle diagram, you got the 4 circles, and some people are, you know, they're like way out on the right side where it's just the E, or they're way on the left side where it's just the M. And some people are living in one of these realms or working in one of these kinds of magics where 2 of them overlap, or all 3, or 3 out of 4 overlap. And sometimes you just have to accept that that you live in a part of the process of magic that does not have the same elements in it as a certain other practitioner. And they're both going to work, and you're never going to agree on exactly how to do the same thing at the same time, because you just have a different mix of elements in the way that your power flows.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? That, it's kind of like there's more than one way to solve a problem, but the two ways may not seem to agree with each other, and yet they can both work because they're just composed of different numbers of elements. Some systems are more hybrided than others, and some are very refined.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, like I said, I don't, the only experience I have to go with is what I've experienced. I can only go by what I think, what I feel, what I see, what I hear, what I've actually experienced. So, I assume that everyone else goes upon the same information. You're going to do what you do because of your experience, what you've experienced. But when I hear people talk about, like what started this conversation, talking about they invoked a spirit, and suddenly something went wrong. It's like, I hear Bill Schnoebelen in that. There's so much Bill Schnoebelen that I hear in that, because if that's, it's just, it kind of keeps people afraid. It keeps people fearful of that. It's like, oh, well, I don't want to try to invoke that because, something bad might happen. No, do it. See what happens. If you have a bad experience and you don't like it, then don't do it ever again. But chances are, if you're honest about it, if you're realistic about it, and you go through the experience, you're going to find out, wow, nothing happened. Everything is just fine.
That sounds like Sam. Oh, go ahead.
So yeah, it's just one quick thing. It's a way of walking through that fear. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, no, and you know what you just reminded me of, because I'm, like I've said before, as far as I can tell, all of the really senior, experienced, effective practitioners I've ever known were effectively, in terms of there's a real God out there sitting on Mount Olympus in a chair. So we know that reality is a little more subtle than that. But so I watched a lot of skeptical videos. I watched Richard Sam Harris, or I said that already, Penn Jillette. Mm-hmm. Teller doesn't talk enough, but I love it when he talks. To remind me of when you're talking about that is the way Sam Harris has described his exploration of psychedelics as part of meditation, trance work, or contemplative. He uses the word contemplative because he likes the hard word. Contemplative explorations of the self. And he had kind of a similar experience with mushrooms and LSD and stuff. And, he said, well, what's the worst that could happen? You don't overdose on this stuff, so let's take some in this environment. Let's take some in this environment. And he kind of experimented with it. And he found in the end that it kind of wasn't for him in general, because he wasn't the kind of person who was always going to benefit from the experience. When he thought he was going to have the really great experience when he was out in nature on a lake or something in Tibet, wherever he was. I remember him telling this story, and he dropped something or other that he was dropping, and had like the worst trip of his life. Mm-hmm. And what he found was that the experience was too variable to be good for him, but that was his way of sort of approaching it as, it's not going to kill me. Let's see what happens. And
yeah, but drugs are completely different. The reason why you have a reaction to them and you experience things you experience is because it's essentially poisoning you. It's causing your mind, or whatever drug it is, that you're taking. If you're taking a psychedelic drug, it's actually poisoning your brain and having a negative effect on you, and that's why you're experiencing whatever it is that you're experiencing. And it's one of the reasons why I don't use drugs in my practice, because you're not in the right state of mind. You're not experiencing reality. You're experiencing a created reality, a false reality. So you might as well just sit around and tell yourself that you are experiencing God or whatever, because you're taking a drug which is causing you to not experience reality. You know.
Can I back you up? Can I back you up?
Sure,
Because you do
sure.
this constantly. I'm saying that Sam Harris was using this particular idea of, if it might have value, explore it. And the symptom of the way he was doing that was drugs. And then you completely leave the idea of exploration and go start talking about the dangers of drugs. About the dangers of drugs, I was talking about the idea of exploration. And it's like that thing where you were complaining about plating seems neon, compare them to you, and it's times.
Okay, well, you're breaking up really badly, so I missed that part. So okay. I'm sorry if I
maybe emotion. You're breaking up too.
Yeah. So whatever. Yeah. So okay. So you were talking about how Sam Harris was exploring the experience of it. Okay. So for that, okay. So exploring, yeah, there's nothing wrong with exploring. If you're going to explore the woods,
he was doing.
Or if you're going to be exploring your neighborhood, or if you're going to be exploring this, yeah, there's nothing wrong with exploration. But yeah, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I was trying to agree with you that there's some value to that as long as you're in a safe surrounding. Just in case that you don't expect turns out to be true, it's nice to have some backup. You don't want to take your first exploration of entirely new territory without a guide, without some backup.
Okay, so yeah, but okay, so I hope I heard everything that you heard or what you said, but I was talking about experiences of, a ritual, and how if you face your fears and go through your fears, you find out that there's nothing to fear in that respect. And you were talking about Sam Harris exploring and taking drugs. And I'm going to come back to the same point. It's okay to go through rituals and do that because you're going to find out that there's nothing to fear. And people, in my opinion, who spread fears about evil spirits and all these things entering you during the ritual is nonsense. That's my opinion. I think that that in itself is holding people back. It's keeping them in a fearful sense, like, oh, they shouldn't do such and such because something evil will happen or some awful thing will happen to them. That hasn't been my experience.
Yeah. You may not have much fear. People have different amounts of it. From anecdotes you've alluded to before, it sounds like you've been one of those people who was willing to go out, be in the demonstration, stand up for a cause, get arrested, go through the process of protesting. You may just have a lot less fear than most people. There's a lot of people that have to go through an awful lot of work to get past fear. And so that may be one of your strengths.
Well, I mean, yeah, okay, well, thank you. But yeah. But I mean, fear is also...
Most people don't.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Just something to consider about yourself, that maybe there's a trade-off between certain aspects of, the talents you have or the resources you have and the sensitivities you have, and it's kind of like the 4-circle diagram. We're all made up of a certain mix of things.
Wow, you really like to throw in your diagram.
That's why I made it the icon, because it's a good reference. Because you can look at it and go, oh, this person may be pure that, and this person may be this complicated, this other stuff.
I know. I'm just impressed that you can work it into almost any conversation.
It's the only intermediate thing we have. It's a reference. That in your devil head. We can't draw stuff on a piece of paper and hold it up to the screen right now because I don't have a camera.
Yeah.
Please, if I could just draw this and hold it up to a camera so I can see what the hell I'm talking about when I'm trying to talk about world spirits. But,
so, all right. Well, it's already 7 o'clock, so we'll probably wrap it up. But so we started this whole conversation talking about The deviant witches were talking about evil, or not evil spirits, but entities that they invoked into
Mhm.
themselves. And so, did they have any suggestions on what to do if somebody finds himself in this situation where they've invoked some sort of spirit that's spooking them?
Well, in their case, they seem to have done their research, done their practice, and worked up to the notion of and the process of spiritual communions fairly carefully, and have an impressive amount of, I would say, insight into the ways that it works and doesn't work. And really, if somebody wants to hear what they have to say about it, the best thing to do would be to go listen to them talk about it on Sacred Circles channel, because there's, whenever you have some process that's that complex and involved and takes that much practice, there's 100 details. I was just impressed that people who when I first saw them, thought, wow, they're young. What do they have to say? I was impressed and sort of reminded that actually they're not that young. They could have been practicing this stuff for 10 years each and actually be pretty good at it. I've just gotten so old that I have to think really hard to think back to what it was like. What was I up to? Or what were you up to at that age? And realize that there are people coming up who also have talent, skills, dedication, discipline, and it's kind of refreshing.
How old do you think they are?
Well, like I said, I've gotten old enough. It's hard to guess ages, but they look and sound like maybe 20s, 20 something, which is about as good as I can guess.
Okay.
Which means, from our end, it's like, oh, there's the next generation coming up. Oh boy, what are they going to do with the world? On the other hand, that generation is also full of people who have, all of those talents, disciplines, and virtues. And
that's okay. At that age, that's where I was at the stage where I believed in evil spirits. So they're about at the right place.
Maybe that's a progression. Some people continue to use that metaphor for years, but what occurred to me was not only is it inevitable that then is going to carry forward whatever gets carried forward, but that we really ought to be fine with that, because there's enough of them out there that are good enough and are willing to do the work that, hang on a minute, that we can leave the world in their hands, And sometimes it's hard to remember that, because you're thinking, oh well, like you said, oh, they're in that stage, and are they? It's like you're almost worried. Will they ever progress? Well, they've progressed that far, that fast, and okay, I might have to think back 30 years or whatever to remember what it was like to be them, but they're coming along just fine. And I'm fine with that. I guess I have a moment fine with that. And the next generation is going to be full of the same mix of practitioners that ours was, sort of similar. And hopefully, as like you say, like almost like reincarnation, hopefully we can trust them with the future, and hopefully we'll be there to nag them and be part of it.
Right. Well, I don't want to misrepresent your perspective there, but did you have some kind of a concern, like the next generation coming up is not going to be okay? I mean, I'm just trying to figure that out, because I don't concern myself with such things. I think the next generation of whoever will be just fine.
Yeah, well, I think it's good to be reminded of, because before you become that old man shouting, get off my lawn, saying, it's just good to be reminded of it. Sometimes it's good to just be reminded of the fact that you see how far you've progressed in your career. You know how far you've grown, and then you think, oh God, and it took so much work, and is somebody going to be able to duplicate that? And sometimes it's good to be reminded that yes, someone else is going to be able to duplicate that effort. They are out there. You're not alone. It's a little bit of you're not alone, and your generation isn't the only generation that could get it done.
Yeah. I mean, because one of the ways that I look at it is you know, I mean, everybody is at a different stage, you know, sort of like, you know, evolving. We're all still, you know, kind of evolving, even with our theories and ideas and beliefs. And, you know, it's often when I'm on YouTube or I listen to people, I'm not going to say who, but sometimes I see people on YouTube and I go, oh, I kind of have a good idea of where they're at, you know, and that's okay. They're just, you know, going through whatever they need to go through to reach whatever conclusion they need to conclude, you know. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of like the way that I look at it. And there's a lot of people I've seen on YouTube that I'm impressed with. I'm like, wow, really, that's cool. I really like that. You know, I think that they're really on, or or sometimes I'm even surprised, you know, not really surprised, but I completely agree with them and go, wow, you know what? That's something I never really thought about, or that's a really creative way of doing that. So we're all sort of at a different point, you know, in our evolution, in our practice, you know. Um, but I do think that people go through stages, and I think that it's a natural process. You sort of go through, you know, when you're a kid, you're really playful and you have little imaginary friends, and you know, and then maybe you kind of grow up a little bit and you find out that you know you knew that an imaginary friend was kind of an imaginary friend, and you kind of go through that, and then you start looking at things a little more realistically and down to earth, and it's just kind of in my opinion, it's just sort of like an evolutionary process. And I think everybody kind of goes through that process at their own speed and in their own way. um, you know, and yeah, so that's kind of
Yeah,
how
I
I
think
look at
there's
it.
both a special pleasure and a special pain as you know, someone who's done 4 or 5 decades of the work to
Hmm.
see, you know, to see, oh, you know, in a way, it holds a mirror up to you to see other people coming along in the next generation,
Hmm.
and you know, in a way, it makes you less special in the vanity sense,
Hmm.
but it also makes the process more special.
Yeah.
You know, because you realize this is it really, for one thing, it tells you the process is kind of real.
Hmm.
Because hey, other people I've never known, have no contact with, we don't even share the same information sources, but they're discovering similar kinds of truths in their development.
Hmm.
You know, and it's a little bit of a validation, but it's also a little bit humbling.
Hmm. All right. Well, I'm gonna kind of abruptly change gears because I'm gonna wrap
That's
this
fine.
up. So I
We're already way over.
apologize. Yeah,
That's
but so I think what I'll do is for the rest of September, maybe we'll have a hangout, maybe on the 20th, and then in October maybe we'll have one like on the then October going forward, maybe we'll have a hangout the first Wednesday of every month. How does that sound to you?
I'm scribbling notes. So you
Oh,
want
okay.
to, yeah, so you want to do one like two? Is that 2 weeks from now?
Yeah. So on the
And
20th.
then do just the first Wednesday of the month hangout.
Yeah, and then the next one would be October. Whoops.
We got to get more people in this.
Well, yeah, I
Got
was
to get
hoping
two more
more.
Patreons, so there's something other than
I know,
Miss
really.
Mary. Miss Mary tonight. It's nice. It was nice to have her in last week.
But she's busy too. But
Yeah. Oh,
so I
yes.
think it was October 4th. Yeah, so it'll be October the 4th. So we'll do one September 20th and October the 4th. How does that sound?
That's great. If you still want to talk, if it's still being useful to you in any way,
No,
you know,
I enjoy talking with you.
okay.
I mean, I like I said, I think that you and I come from, you know, from a different perspective, but I think that I mean, I find it beneficial, you know.
Okay. If
And,
it,
and I know that we get into some disagreements with each other, but you know, I think that it's for the most part it's civil.
yeah. Um, well, it's you find out where your hot buttons are a little bit when you run into the alien thing.
Yeah.
You know, if, it is kind of cool because, like even tonight, I've learned new things about, you know, how you have a very effective magic practice based on principles and perceptions that were different than what I expected.
Hmm.
And you know, and that makes me realize things. It's like, wow, somebody can actually be that far into that world and they're still having an effective magical practice and having a beneficial effect on the world. So that's cool because it keeps my eyes open. It keeps me from, you know, the hard thing about turning into old men is trying not to get too ossified, too, you know, fossilized. And
well, yeah, I'm sorry about that. I thought you knew. I thought maybe we had this conversation, or maybe you heard me talk about that before. So sorry you didn't know that.
No, it's cool because I thought I knew too.
Okay.
And sometimes it's only by spending a little time that you can find out, you know, just how differently what you think you know can be to someone else who knows it as in a different way. And to me, that's always cool. I mean, that's why I like science fiction.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, oh wow, I never thought of, you know, that aspect of that, or that you could have, you know, that cool thing happen on that principle, because I don't usually use that principle that way. Mm-hmm. Or you can, or to be able to do it without that principle, you can do A without having A and B together. Mm-hmm. It sounds like it's kind of like that kind of a reductionist or a pure, or I don't want to say purifying, but refining process that you use, or, you know, and it's like, okay, that's cool to see how far that can go. Mm-hmm. And still have the same effect, and still have the same, you know, values or ethics, and still have a positive effect on your world, even when you've stripped away certain things that you found not to be entirely necessary. Mm-hmm. You know, and but likewise, like when I was talking about the correspondences thing, I'm working effectively with all that crap stripped away. And so clearly there's two things there that have a minimal amount of overlap, but they're both moving forward together, you know, as a general tradition of trying to do, you know, help the world through magic, help the world through influence. And it's just, it's kind of funny. It's a kind of like a funhouse mirror. It's like, wow. It is. It's kind of like a fun. You see yourself in that reflection and go, "Oh, what must I look like to that?"
All right. Well, hey, Animus, it was a lot of fun, and so we'll do it again in 2 weeks. And the Saturday hangout, I'm probably going to do the same thing. I'm probably going to do a Saturday hangout once every month, beginning in October. I'm just going to I'm going to think about that some more, but I'll probably have like the hangout this Saturday, and then see from that point. So,
yeah.
All right.
Well, you guys, and well, thanks for having me on again. It was extremely interesting.
Yes, it was.
Doesn't get any better than interesting.
No, it's always fun chatting with you. So, all right, sir. Thank you so much, Animist, and thanks everybody in the chat, and have a good night.